Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner, brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cryptid Creator Corner. I'm Byron O'Neal, your host for our Comics Creator Chat. I am super excited because I'm finally back in the saddle, recording again after a really long extended break for a lengthy lupus flare, but I'm back with a bang because I've got returning guest Pornsak Pichetshote on with me and first-time guest Rafael Albuquerque to discuss their new 6-issue DC Comics project, Absolute Green Arrow. A series I know everyone is quivering with excitement about. Sorry, I've got a bow. I'm like an archer person myself, so
Oh,
I could not
ooh,
resist the
wow,
pun. Yeah, I've got like
nice.
an old Mongolian replica bow,
Oh,
so it's like
wow,
a yeah, big old recurve bow. It's pretty
nice.
hefty. So yeah. But welcome to you both. It's very nice to have you on.
Thank
See?
you, thank you. It's great to see you again, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's 2026. 2026 is a bit of a dumpster fire. So I'm not going to ask in general how things have been, but how have comics been? Like Pornsak, I know you've been on the stump about this already with WonderCon, I think it was recently.
Yeah. Just at WonderCon, and is that the first time I talked about it in public? It might. I guess so. I guess it's the first time I talked about it with the crowd was in public. And I mean, like you said, 2026 is a dumpster fire of the year for the world. But as history has taught us, comics tend to do well during times like
Yep,
that, and that
yep.
certainly is the case now. The Absolute. I feel very lucky and very blessed to be working with Rafa and be part of this Absolute universe where it's just a rocket into space. And yeah, and now it seems like things are trickling over to like the buzz around indie books with like with some Image and Mad Cave stuff. So it's all really it's exciting time to be in the world of comics.
Yeah, absolutely. Rafa, what you been up to? Just trying to catch up on all these pages?
Oh, yeah. Uh, yeah, pretty much. We're just finishing. We just finished issue 2. I'm just starting issue 3, which is great, by the way. So yeah, it's been a lot of work, but I'm having a lot of fun as well. Having fun in a way that I didn't had in the comics for a long time. So it's been professionally a really good year for me as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and Rafa, you're like a superhero veteran already, but I don't Pornsak, I think this might be your like really big first foray into it with the big
It's
two. How are
it's
you
my it's my
feeling?
it's my first superhero book. I'm terrified. It's we'll see how I do. The one thing I will say is every time I hear Rafa talk about how much fun he's having, and it sounds so cheesy and it sounds like I'm saying for press, but it's like the honor of my life because he's done so many big stuff like all throughout DC and all throughout comics. So like the best moment I have with the script is just the fact that Rafa's having fun and this book is weird in the sense of like me and Rafa are so on the same page about what the book is. I feel like I'm writing the book for him, and if he enjoys it, that means the book is on the right track. And it's because we had like we've talked so much about what the book is, about what we want the book to be, and it should be. So it feels like this wild thing where I'm just writing the book for Rafa, and if I know if I write the book for Rafa, it will be a good book.
That's awesome. I'm like always lamenting how I hate the dogma in canon, and the Absolute Universe has really opened that up, I think, for a lot of people, like where you don't have limited storytelling. And people are going to get mad at me right now, but as a big fan of the character, we're still like in Justice League B territory, right? Like DC typically they don't have an expectation generally with Green Arrow or Aquaman that the sales are just going to knock it out of the park. But so I'm curious, does it feel like you have a measure of freedom because of that? Or does having Absolute on the cover just like change the game these days?
I mean, Absolute it's funny, there's a couple different levels to it. Even before the sales success of Absolute, just being in the same company as Scott and Jason and Kelly and Al and Jeff, and that's not even talking about these amazing artists, right? And Dennis, right? Just and Che. Just being in that same company, that's a layer of pressure because they're so good at what they do. And then you add the art to it. And then now there's sort of the sales sort of expectation. And and there's been so much excitement from the fans, and um, so an interesting thing for me coming from more independent books is that when I come on a podcast like this and when I'm talking to a crowd, my job is to get people excited. And one of the things I found with Absolute Green Arrow is they start off very excited. And so now my job is to just keep that excitement going and not disappoint anybody. So it's a really interesting thing for me to come at it sort of with my background being what it is. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure. But the other thing too, and I think I don't know if it's like this for any I can't imagine the scenario where it could be like this for any other book, but with the Absolute sort of stuff, is that not only are you given a free, you get free reign to sort of reimagine stuff as you do. I honestly feel like people's history with comics and with the character it is like a plus to the book in a way because like what we're doing is for this like for anyone who doesn't know, Absolute Green Arrow is about a serial killer who's slaughtering corrupt billionaires, and the only clue to his identity is the green arrows found in the body of his victims. And they're meant to be a symbol to some very rich and very powerful people that you can't get away with just killing all of our queens. So it's I Know What You Did Last Summer for Billionaires, and it follows the perspective of an executive protection specialist named Dinah Lance, Absolute Black Canary, as she tries to discover the identity of the killer, and all of her suspects are people DC fans will recognize as popular or familiar DC archers. And the thing that so it's a murder mystery. It's a Giallo, a slasher movie. And the thing that where I find the continuity so much fun is the fact that if you've never read a comic before, you will hopefully get a really cool murder mystery. But if you do know the comics, you get a different type of mystery because there's a bunch of Easter eggs in there that are meant to be clues, but there's also stuff that's meant to be red herrings. And part of the fun, I think, is playing with your knowledge of if you're a DC fan, playing your knowledge with DC and the Arrow family and all that kind of stuff to see if you can get ahead of the mystery. But if you're not, then hopefully there's a slasher movie mystery that's also sort of ready for you. So that's a weird, and I can't imagine there's many opportunities where you get to do that, where you get a chance to do not whatever you want, but reinterpret the mythology, but in a way where there's an extra level of a game if you know the mythology and the continuity. So that feels like a very special, unique place for me to be and for us
Yeah.
to get to play in. So yeah, and hopefully it comes through to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan, longtime fan. Like my own timeline with Green Arrow as a character goes back to '87 with the Mike Grell Longbow Hunters run. As a teenager, I was completely captivated. My co-host Jimmy got Mike to actually, I've got it here, sign a copy at Baltimore Comic Cons. So that's a little bit of a grail for me. And we know here that the media has christened our new Green Arrow the Longbow Hunter. So there's some connective tissue in here, considering what the solicits are saying about the story beats. Time is a flat circle. So, what was the endpoint for the character for both of you all?
I think for me, wait, when you say the endpoint, do you mean for this iteration of the character, my first introduction to the character in
Yeah,
general?
how were you exposed to Green Arrow? Like, I'm trying to get an idea of the background here, kind of.
I I think I could be wrong about this. I think I've always sort of seen him and stuff, but I don't think my first Green Arrow comic proper was until Kevin Smith's Green Arrow. I think
Okay.
he was the one. I'm trying to remember if I had bought the Longbow Hunters before that, or if I ended up buying the Longbow Hunters in like 50-cent dollar boxes after that. But I know they happened very quickly in most. But like the thing that people forget, or at least I should say, the thing that I forget is that when Kevin Smith wrote Green Arrow, it was like the number 2 DC comic. I actually don't know what the number 1 DC comic at the time was, but Kevin Smith was such a huge name, and I was a
Yeah.
fan of all of his movies. So like I read his Daredevil and I read his Green Arrow. I want to say if it wasn't Longbow Hunters, it was Kevin Smith's Green Arrow, and that was my first Green Arrow comic. I mean, obviously I'd seen him in a bunch of stuff before that, but that was the first time I picked up a Green Arrow comic.
Yeah. Rafa, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, when I was a kid, because here in Brazil they collect the. It's not like single issues, just like in the United States. They have like collections of many different issues in the same book, right? So
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I was used to the classic Batman, Superman comics that were definitely more aimed for children. And eventually, the publisher here, they put out a book called Hunters, which the name is Brazilian, but it collected Dennis Cohen question and my girl's Green Arrow, and that was definitely for a more mature audience. So that blew my mind when I was a kid, right? I was
Yeah.
finally grew up comic. So and I still love these comics until now. I'm a huge fan of Dennis Cohen as well and Question, and that definitely shaped the way uh, I probably do comics. I like more mature and more dark stuff when I'm working. So it definitely comes from that, I suppose.
Well, I'm curious about how the project kind of from the beginning, right? It feels more seated in terms of the absolute titles that we've seen so far. We're spinning out of the pages of Absolute Evil #1 last October. Oliver is murdered by Hawkman, or so we assume, those of us who are not in the know. So what was the remit here from Scott Snyder and Chris Conroy in terms of like a story structure? Did they give you a lot, or was it just that?
So this is what the amazing thing is about the way Scott and DC or editorial and Chris have sort of set up the Absolute Universe is that you're given total freedom, and yet you would think that we're giving a remit. So the way it works was that like this Giallo take on the Green Arrow was something that we always sort of wanted to do. And in classic Giallo style, who is the killer? Is the killer someone who's dead? Is the killer someone who's like alive and all that stuff? So dead Oliver Queen was what we started off with, and that was part of the pitch from jump. And then it was those guys in the amazing absolute sort of writers room. There was just like, hey, as opposed to putting it off panel, let's put it on panel. Let's do an absolute. And they worked it into Absolute Evil and kind of turned it into what it is. But it's so organic. Like you would obviously think, oh no, they did it first and they told us like, here's where the character sits. But no, it all sort of came from us, and they were just so good about integrating everything that like you can pick up our series completely cold, completely clean because that's how it was intended to. But it flows very organically from the things that are happening in the Absolute Universe. And it is kind of like that unicorn that we always talk about in comics, where it's just like, no, these comics that you can pick up at any time or are part of a bigger tapestry. And it really feels
Yeah.
like they figured out a way to do that because like, no, they didn't tell me at all. In fact, if anything, I told them, we told them, like, when we start off, the world is going to believe Oliver Queen is dead. And there's like, oh, really? Well, then we can do this then.
That's awesome. Well, I want to jump into Rafa because I've this is one of my delights is when I actually get to talk to the artist as well, because I always conceptualize from an artistic brain. And Pornsak's always kind enough or I don't know, maybe insecure enough because he's been on three times, and every single time he brings the artist along, which I'm very grateful for. But for American Vampire, you adapted this kind of chameleon artistic style. You were shifting
Mhm.
between two perspectives of the writers that you were working with on the project, kind of changing to fit their vision of what they're doing. So it's a very adaptive style, which I'm not used to seeing as much. So with this book, kind of walk me through what you had in mind when you were starting to conceptualize the world. Like here's serial killer Green Arrow.
Yeah, I think it's part of the same process of trying to adapt my style into telling the story in the best way as I can. So I think the mood we were trying to, and we discussed that with Pornsak and with Marcelo Maiolo, who's the colorist as well. We discussed what kind of mood we wanted for the book, and ultimately we felt that would be great if we could have these 70s thrillers movies uh, texture in a way.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of subjective, but that's how we approach it. So I'm using a different technique on the art as well, trying to use a lot of um, pencil work, textures, you know, almost like what it's called. I forgot the name in English. Anyway, trying to bring some texture into the art and into the color to bring, this kind of this feel. We want to feel like somehow like a vintage thing, I suppose. Although it's not,
Okay.
it's set on the present day. We wanted to have that feel.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was really impressed with Marcelo's color work on it, just from the pages that I've seen. It's stellar.
Yeah.
It's like really grimy and gritty. I mean, it feels like old school Daredevil in a way,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
There's something about. Go ahead, Rafa.
No. It's definitely one of the reference. We researched a lot. Batman Year One as well. That kind of coloring from the '80s as well. In the comics, same thing for the lettering. We really wanted to bring that nostalgic feel, I suppose.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
thing that like if you've only seen like, and the thing that gets me excited about the comic is that like people have seen the low res you know pages online, they've seen more images off of a screen that shows and all that kind of stuff, but like the high res sort of stuff that I have the luxury of seeing from Marcelo, from Maiolo, is it's just that it's that grit that is so cool. And obviously I haven't seen it printed yet, but it feels like it's a whole other experience to just get all the detail of all the grit. And it's so cool. Like I remember, you saw the I had seen the low res previews for so long, and then it came time to fight for him to actually like download in massive files the high res stuff. And when I saw those, I got so excited because it's just it and it feels insignificant, but just the grit gives it so much more presence. And I cannot wait to see it printed to see how it translates on that. But it does sort of feel like, it just feels so. It gives it so much weight.
Yeah, I
Rafa,
agree.
are
The
you doing
coloring
that
is
with
great.
traditional?
I'm sorry.
No, no.
Go
I was
ahead.
just asking if you do it with traditional brushwork, or how are you doing that to kind of create that?
Uh, Most of my stuff is digital now, but
Okay.
and all the layouts, especially, I did digitally. But there are
Okay.
some pages, the most the splash pages, and probably the most appealing pages, I ink it traditionally, so I can sell it later.
Maybe. Yeah, makes sense. Well,
Mhm.
the most
And
recognizable
even the
piece
covers
of
as well. Yeah.
okay. Well, one of the things that I'm curious about here, because the most recognizable piece visually of Green Arrow has always been the bow, and to some lesser extent, like the cowl. So, from what we've seen, the silhouette is dominated now by this mask. It's like much darker, much more menacing. Not what we've come to expect. It looks like a Japanese Oni mask of sorts. Which kind of sells that infused horror element. It eliminates a lot of facial acting, so you can't use that, visually to kind of tell the story. So all killer, no filler, I guess, as it were. So, so was that fit something you kind of came up with together, like the new look, the new outfit, that sort of thing? Where'd you come up with that?
What's so impressive about that question is it literally recaps every conversation we've had about the costume and the mask. Like literally everything you talked about is something we've had many conversations about. To like the influence on the Oni mask and the death mask on it, to the amount of acting we can get through the mask, and like, me and Rafa have had long conversations about how to handle that, and strategies on like what to do. So like I'm very impressed with that question because like that question encapsulates like a month of conversation between me and Rafa, going back and forth about this. And the thing that I think makes Rafa such a great designer is that I'm used to character designs where, you ask for character design, the artist sends something, you say this, and then they send something. Like Rafa just is so in depth with just like how these things work, where the influences are, all this kind of stuff. It is a very long process, and I had the pleasure of talking to Rafa during this, so you can see how his brain works as he prints it up. It's not just dash off a thing and send it over. From the bow to the mask to the costume. Like there's so much thinking about how it's practically used, and where the influences are, and references here and there. It's a very cool process to just get to be a fly in the wall from and which I did for this book. So I was very it was a thrill.
Well, let's get into
Yeah,
some of the
I'm glad it
influences
worked it out.
because we've
I'm sorry, I have a delay here. Yeah.
no, it's quite all right. Well, I wanted to jump into some of the influences because one of the signatures, kind of the Absolute books. You have Nick Dragotta clearly with a big manga influence in what he's doing. I'm not sure, Rafa, if you're a gamer, but I'm seeing like Garrett from the Thief video game series, definitely maybe some Assassin's Creed vibes that are in there. And it looks like there's some like Legolas short stories maybe happening as well. So just curious about where you were kind of pulling from for some of those visual cues.
Yeah, I'm not much of a gamer, and although I know these games from what I see online, I'm not a gamer myself. But it's possible that there's some subconscious reference on it for sure. Um, but it definitely came from the idea that we wanted this character to look like uh very scary for their targets, for his targets. So it, an evolution of the visuals, and if you look at the very first design we did, it's nothing like that. So it's something that was built on, and with me and Pornsak for sure. And that's the best thing. That's why this is one of my favorite collaborations. Is because Pornsak is available all the time, and we are definitely talking constantly. So it feels to me like he's in my studio working in the same place, so I can show him ideas. He returns that. So it's just the best way to collaborate. It's definitely made. It's not just me doing that. It's a group of people collaborating at the same time, which is great.
Well, it sounds like a visit down to Brazil's in order then, Pornsak. You need a
I love that. If DC is listening and they want to send me to Brazil, I am totally down.
Just come.
Well, based upon some of what you've already said with some of these influences, especially given the 80s, can we maybe expect a few visual nods to Mike Grell's The Longbow Hunters, just as somebody of my vintage who is a big fan, and I'm kind of curious here?
Uh, I I I'm curious if fans will pick up on my nods to Grell's run. They're pretty deep cut, um,
Okay.
but they're there. I this isn't the game for me. Like I don't know, like I'm fascinated. They're fans of everything, right? And so they sort of pick up sort of stuff. But it's always interesting to me what people choose to pick up and what people don't sort of pick up. Like, what like cues. There's been so much speculation about obviously Green Arrow and all this kind of stuff. I've heard some people have questions about Dinah Lance's past. There's
Yeah.
a question that I'm surprised no one's asked, which is Dinah Lance is a bodyguard and no one's asked who she's guarding, and I think that's an interesting answer. So it's always I'm always curious. There's definitely references to the Grell run in there. I am curious, are those fans gonna be like, oh, I totally see that, or will it just like fly right by? I don't know. I'm curious.
Well, I'm curious about the threads that you do have here, right? So going back, I can't help but sort of escape Edgar Wallace's novel, The Green Archer, which was adapted into a film in the 1940s. There are some similarities. You got a rich dude who is murdered by a masked marksman, who's perceived as a ghost. There's a private detective on the case trying to figure it all out. You talked about the Giallo comparisons here, the Italian mystery film, kind of thriller films of the 60s and the 70s, known for lots of violence. So there's a lot of coding here. So what threads are making up your tapestry here when you're going into Billionaire Serial Killer 2026?
I mean, a lot of 2026 is making it is making its way to the book. Lots of Green Arrow lore. From all over all the major runs. Whether it's Mike Grell, but whether it's Kevin Smith or Judd Winnick or Brad Meltzer or Ben Percy. There's a couple more runs and there's some artists in there that I'm missing. So a lot of that's in there. Lots of Giallos, lots of slasher movies, Korean revenge thrillers. That's all sort of thrown into the mix. I'm trying to think what else. I feel like Robin Hood, going all the way back to Green Arrow's inspiration. I think all that is kind of in the soup of what the book is.
Interesting. Yeah, Giallo is one of those funny things to me because it's Italian also for yellow, and we're talking about Green Arrow, and it always cracks me up. It makes me laugh.
So this is something that I learned. Alejandro Arbona, who has a great Giallo, Lake Yellowwood Slaughter, that he did with Goat's Head Press, Flying Goats Press, is he had pointed out to me that I guess there's Giallos and there's slasher movies, and Giallo is where where it's the thing where the reveal of the killer is someone you've met in the course of the story. And slasher
Okay.
movies are just when they're slashes, but there's no like mystery reveal in that way. And I never knew that
Yeah.
there was a difference, which is why for I've been using the word Giallo to sort of describe this, because it is technically more accurate than slasher movie, even though slasher movies are Giallo. Giallos are slasher movies, although not every slasher movie is a Giallo, I guess.
I'll have to go back. Like, okay, so Scream.
Scream is a Giallo. I don't know. I know what you did last summer. That's a Giallo. But like Halloween is a slasher movie.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So that was just a fun piece of horror nerd trivia that I learned in the course of making this.
Well, speaking of horror, I mean, like having a horror coded absolute book, this is the first. I mean, like it's something that's really this dark. I mean, we've certainly dipped into some difficult subject matter, and I mean, the last that Scott Snyder run with Bane on Absolute Batman, like wow, that was intense. So we have a lot of that intensity, but like horror coding, like I'm really curious to see how this works. Like I'm a huge fan of Gene Colan's work, like the old Tomb of Dracula, Werewolf by Night series were my introductions to the horror. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really curious. I've been studying a lot of this stuff to kind of figure out how to transmit horror in a comic book effectively. So Rafa, I'm curious, every artist's approach is going to be a little bit different. I was reading Werther's Something is Killing the Children, Volume 9, which I can't believe it's on Volume 9. Congratulations, team, on that, because that's crazy for an indie book. But like what transmits horror to you? Like as an artist, you're putting this on the page, you're wanting the reader to see this, to experiencing it. You've worked in horror, you've done a lot of horror books, so.
Yeah. In general, I would say it's the expectation of of something is more powerful than actually showing things. It's pretty much like every time I show something, the goriest thing, whatever. Okay, it might be impactful, but if I build tension before, I don't even need to show that, because the ultimate image is going to be on the reader's mind, and nothing can actually and that's going to be satisfactory for the reader in any way. You know what I'm saying? So I think for me as a storyteller at making a horror book, it's about building tension, building expectation. That's what I feel that good horror comics and horror movies and horror games, whatever horror stories are about. It's not about showing the gore things. It's about building tension and making. That's why Stephen King is so good. He really makes you care, and then he just crushes whatever you love. But there's a construction, and that's how I feel about working in the hard thing.
Sorry, there was a delay there, but we're all kind of hearing about how much the Absolute Universe is bringing in new and younger readers, which is exciting. We've all been waiting for that for some time in comics. I don't know about both of you, but I'll never forget picking up my first real horror comic, which I could truly understand was a horror comic, which was Garth Ennis's run on Hellblazer, which blew my mind, right? I picked it up because I was reading the Demon run, which a lot of people would probably argue is horror, but I wouldn't. I thought it was just funny. But, talking about creating horror, what were some of your all's influences, like horror comics influences growing up? I'm just curious about, like, I'm really into coding here. Excuse me if I'm off on a tangent, but
No, that's great. I think for me, I can remember the horror comics that sort of really hit me sort of hard, and the seminal ones is Alan Moore and Steve Bissett's Swamp Thing. I still remember that panel where I want to say it's in the second arc where the little boy is walking around with that orangutan looking monster, and they talk about how this one girl, it's like making everyone's nightmares come real. And so this one girl grew up being afraid of AIDS, but no one told her what AIDS was. And so you just see all this like crazy stuff in her hospital room. And that still has like a palpable effect. I can still remember that. I can still remember when I discovered Junji Ito, and
Yeah.
how that was like looked like nothing else I ever. And that has such a deep impact on how I approach horror. It really, that Junji Ito made me realize like, oh, there's things in horror you can do in comics that you can't do in film, in live action, and to lean into those particular strengths of it. So those are like the two big touchstones for me. I mean, like, and I read a lot of horror comics. It's been really great for me to see. Like, I remember I wrote the horror graphic novel called Infidel back in 2018, miniseries called Infidel back in 2018. And when I was reading it at the time, I had to look for all the horror comics and and just to reread them and all that kind of stuff. And there wasn't a ton to choose from. Like something like The Walking Dead kind of lost the horror aspect to it. It was in the horror genre, but it wasn't like the goal wasn't to be scary in quite the same way. And now I have a whole long box of horror comics I haven't read, just like that I keep meaning to read just because there's so many horror comics in the past 8 years, 6 years since 2018. What is math? 8 years since 2018. There's so many more horror comics on the stand. So that's been really exciting for me to just read all that and pick up things and all that.
Yeah, it seems like we're in a renaissance, golden years of horror as a genre, not just in comics, but in literature and movies and other things. And I mean, I think it's just emblematic of life right now. We've gone through COVID and how that impacted us all, and
Yeah.
now 2026. Without getting overly political and the shit show that we're all experiencing, the craziness with that. So it feels like the perfect time to lean into a horror angle with an absolute book. And I mean, I'm so stoked about this. Rafa, I didn't ask you. What about you and like horror influences and stuff like that in comics?
Um, I've never been much of a comic reader, so I don't really
Okay.
have much of those references. So a lot of my storytelling and my visual reference come from movies. Although Mike Mignola for sure is a huge reference. Bordy Wrightson. I love that Frankenstein book he
Yeah.
illustrated. That although I don't think that's considered a comic book, but it has such a visual impact on me that I try to replicate in a way. Um, and I think all these chiaroscuro artists, these guys who actually play a lot with uh, contrasts and rough compositions. So you can just go with Frank Miller, although he doesn't really do much of horror. Uh, his comic language, his comic, yeah, the way he tells stories have reference enough for me to use in a horror comic. Does it make sense? So I suppose that it tends to come more from movies, but in terms of rhythm and all that. But there are definitely some great horror artists in the comics that I'm a big fan of.
Yeah. I mean, as I was saying, horror being just the experience of living right now, and this is just such a fascinating kind of take on this, I think, in general, because we have the Epstein files that are blanketing the news and billionaires buying influence, consolidating our media and our social media. That's real life horror, right? That you're using as the narrative vehicle here. I know Green Arrow is on the cover, but in ways as more of what sounds like more of a mystery procedural sort of thing. It feels like a way to highlight Black Canary, maybe even a little bit more. And you said nobody's asked about her as a bodyguard, but I'm curious about how, as much as you could say anyway, how much she'll sort of fit into this. And I'm assuming we're not going to see her in fishnets. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, I think on some of the covers you see him around her hands. You see him around her fists and sleeves.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know if she'll be wearing fish sticks out of her life. It doesn't really strike. It doesn't seem like it's her style in this particular version of her. But this story is very. I mean, I long consider Black Canary sort of one of the most underrated characters in the DC universe. She's one of my favorite characters, and so this is very much as this story is a Green Arrow story, it's also very much a Black Canary story. In the same way, as much as Halloween is a story about Michael Myers, it's also about Laurie Strode. And so, and for me, so much of this book is in the Absolute Universe. It is a world where billionaires could do whatever the hell they want, and the laws can't seem to stop them, and they just seem to blatantly ignore the laws in plain sight. And they don't need to, they don't even need to pretend to follow these laws. If you can stretch your imagination to imagine a world where that could actually be possible, then the world of Green Arrow, it becomes very relevant in the sense of how do you just as a regular person live in that world? How you just maintain your morality in a world like that? And we enter the story from Dinah Lance's perspective, who she's a fighter by nature, she's a brawler, but these aren't forces that you can fight. There's no one to punch necessarily to fix the problem. And so much of it is if you're going to be living in a world like that where it just seems like the wrongdoing is overwhelming in public, like and you want to change things, what's the right way to change things? Is there a right way to change things? Is there a wrong way to change things? And how as a person do we survive that? Do we protect our family and our neighbors and our friends, the people we love? And that's really the story of Green Arrow. It's told in this language of very cruel violence and a very heavy body count. But that is the story that we're telling there. And Dinah's the heart of that story. Dinah is, in many ways, this book is a conversation between Dinah and Green Arrow. And again, in the language of cruel violence and dead bodies. But it's very much about, a person struggling with that question. And for me, it's a very personal, struggle, and it's a very personal question. And it is definitely a book that I'm grateful for so many aspects about this book. One, to get a chance to hang out with Scott and Jason and Kelly and everybody there. One, to get to work with Rafa. But the other, and to be part of this sales juggernaut. But the other thing too that I'm really grateful for was it became a place where I worked out a lot of what I was feeling just in life. And at a time where I know, and I've seen it online, my friends be kind of like, I'm having trouble making things right now because of everything else. I had the opposite, perversely. It became easy because it gave me, at a time where I feel powerless, it gave me direction and led me personally to some answers to these questions that I had. And who knows, if I did my job right, maybe there are answers that will be of use to someone else, to other people as well. But for me, it was this very personal journey writing this book has been. And I can say that because I kind of mapped out the story in great detail at this point, and I've read half the scripts, mapped out the other half. But it taught me something about surviving emotionally right now that I didn't know before I started writing it, and I'm super, super, super grateful for that.
Yeah, I was reading in your newsletter that you had said it was deeply personal. So is that why you're just it's a way and a mechanism to sort of process your own experiences as a person in 2026?
Yeah, and I don't know if it wasn't for the book, if I would have had the context or the opportunity to process it. And so it really was, just having all these questions about the world, and just even like, again, like, if you don't like how the world is, what do you do about it? What's the first step? And for me anyway, this book helped me find that. And hopefully, I don't know, I would love it if people walked away getting the same thing I got out of it. That definitely was the case for me.
Yeah, I mean, comics have helped me process. It's weird because I'm processing things in an entirely different way. I found myself actually back to comics after my first big lupus flare, after the first diagnosis, and it was like the one grounding element that I could look forward to at the end of the day to take me out of my body that was failing me. So my relationship to comics all along, as somebody who'd read them ever since I was, 5 years old, drastically different now, so Yeah, it's really interesting to just hear how you're processing that through the book. It's an added layer of texture that I think is definitely going to I mean, it's gonna appeal and resonate with a lot of people.
Hopefully, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you can't elaborate, but it feels like just the tip of the iceberg as DC is promising these new launches in May and June mark only the beginning of what is ahead for the Absolute Universe in 2026 as DC pushes its heroes into moments of absolute terror. So I think we're given a clue here, maybe. Stories that are born from the darkest corners of the DC cosmos, right? So clearly everyone is very excited about this. I know both of y'all are too. It sounds like this is not the end of the horror-oriented take, though, that's happening. I'm secretly hoping, or maybe not so secretly now that I've put it out on a podcast, that an absolute Constantine will emerge as Johnny Boy as a priest. So I'm going to manifest that. Rafa, you need to be on that book because I love what you're laying down here. So you need to.
I didn't know about that. I'm just learning then. That sounds cool.
Yeah, it does sound really cool. I mean, everything has been amazing so far. That Absolute has dropped. So I'm really super looking forward to this book, and really happy that two fantastic creators have managed to find a home on this book and are clearly very happy working together. There's some chemistry here that feels really special. So I think a lot of people will dig this.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully people are into it.
Well, before I let you go, let's touch on what else you got cooking. Pornsak, I know you've been writing some of the Tiny Onion Exquisite Corpses issues recently. Typically, I'm a trades guy, so I'm waiting on volume 2 to get in. What's the experience though been like for you working in what amounts to a rotating writer's room on an indie book?
It's so much fun. It is the most fun and is the easiest gig I've ever worked on in comics. It sounds like when I talk about it, I'm sure it does not sound real, but it's literally, oh, you get to hang out with your friends for a weekend. You chew the shit, you talk a bunch. There are people there taking notes on all of it. So as you're doing it, you don't have to like pay too much attention to that. And then, you hang out with your friends for a weekend, you come back, the editors send you like, here's what you said was going to happen in this issue. You break up into pages, you write into a script, and that's it. Like, it's the easiest gig. It's so much fun. Everyone there is lovely. James has fantastic taste in people. So I had this moment during the launch party of Exquisite Corpse #1. I was hanging out with Che Grayson and Jordi Belair, both who were writers on the book, and we're kind of just like, yeah, it's great because like I love you two, and oh my god, I love Tyler, and I love Michael, and like James is great. And they're like, oh wow, I love everyone. I sincerely like adore everyone who works in the like. There's not a person who feels left out. Like everyone's great, and so to know like, oh, we're doing season 2, we're making travel plans, head back to Buffalo again, and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, oh yeah, I get to hang out with my friends. We don't get to do that as much anymore. So just the chance to do that is fantastic, and to know that like, oh yeah, a comic will come out and they'll pair me with a great artist and pay me to write this stuff. It's such an easy, great gig. I cannot give James and the folks at Tiny Onion more compliments about how well run that ship is.
That's James's true superpower, I'm convinced. He's a very talented writer, but the ability to just pick the right people and drop them and place them together and in a way that connective tissue works is really impressive. So
And he's super smart too, because I think it's also the one thing in comics where it feels like it has a proper amount of infrastructure for what it needs. So much in comics is this would be great if people had a little more money, financing to give the extra weight, but most of the time it doesn't. So everyone's doing 3 jobs, and and you can feel like the strain. Tanian is the one place where it's like, oh no, it's actually properly calibrated to the work at hand, and so you never need to be like, oh, I got to do this person's job because I'm not sure if they're actually going to do it.
yeah. Well, Rafa, what about you? What else you got going on?
Right now just that, but I have this imprint at called Stout Club with other friends, and they are putting out um, a book that I'm doing the covers. It's called Devil's Look. It's coming out through Comixology. It's written by my friend Rafa Scavone and drawn by my other friend Eduardo Ferrigato. So the book is great. It's also a horror kind of mystery horror thing, and it's available in Comixology.
That's awesome. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's out now, or
Yeah, it's out now. Yeah.
okay. I'm not familiar. I'll have to check that out. Very cool. Well,
Yeah,
I
it's
always try
beautiful.
to wrap up on a positive note, or I try to anyway. This is my return to the shout out. It can be something that inspired you recently, or someone just doing something nice for you that you'd like to acknowledge. And I'll go first to give you guys a minute to think about it. Mine can only go to my co-host Jimmy for keeping the podcast going, where I've been out for the health reasons. So, as somebody with a disability who won't be ever able to attend conventions, our show is my lifeline to connect to the community, and it's my love letter to comics. So it means the world to me that we didn't have to take a break. So thank you, Jimmy. So, Pornsak, what do you got?
Oh God. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think like the people who, if I have a person to sort of think, the inspiration, the latest thing that inspired me, that I read was what was I mean, I it's not going to be an original comment, but I love what Dennis Camp has been doing in general, but especially in a sort of crisis events. And I'm a couple months behind because I'm a couple behind on all my comics, so I haven't read this issue 8 that everyone is talking about. So just the issues leading up to that have I found endlessly inspiring and just sort of really kind of galvanized me. And I'll have to think about the person, but the actual person in my life. But in terms of works that inspire me, that is the work that's been inspiring me lately.
I've had to hold off on that one, just like what I'm going through with the personal health stuff. Everybody has said it is so heavy, and I was like, I don't. I'll definitely read it, but I have to hold off for a little
That's
bit. So,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. Rafa, what about you? You got a shout out for somebody or something that just knocked your socks off recently?
Uh, well, there's plenty of, you were just talking about James, I'm sorry, James Tanyan. And I love these people who are uh, getting other creators into making new books independently. Uh, I'm trying to do that myself with Stout Club and my friends, and I admire everybody who's trying to uh, do art, basically, do art, do comic art, do the writing, do the editing, do the whole process in or outside, inside or outside of the big two. Because I think this industry is very, very important, especially nowadays, in this moment where we are, and this crazy moment, crazy planet. So I think art is the thing that can save us, and I admire everybody who's putting their hearts there, working working bravely.
I love that. Does it feel like, as somebody who is had experience in both the big two and doing a lot of independent work, does it feel like it's changing? Because it seems like to me the opportunities for artists to cash in, for just putting it bluntly, whether that's a consolidated online format where they don't have to sell it and direct market it themselves, which allows them to spend more time making art as opposed to marketing, and you have these shows like the Lake Como Arts Festival, and I think now in 2027 they're also, same folks are doing that again in Hawaii. So yeah. Does it feel like there are more opportunities now?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm dying to go to this Lake Como thing. Looks fantastic, and I'm very excited about all that. And it's definitely a more, it's not like a regular convention. It's more art orientated, which is pretty cool as well. So yeah, it's a place I definitely want to go. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
looks
looked
I
really
really
cool.
cool.
Yeah, I think
Go
every
ahead.
comic book writer is jealous of the Lake Como. I can't remember who I was talking to, but they were just kind of like, I don't even think they let writers come. They just like, if you're not an artist,
They
they're like,
don't.
they don't want you there.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, I talked to Steve and Arno about the show, the organizers and stuff, and I was maybe going to try to catch up with them about the whole Hawaii thing, because like Lake Como is one level, but like Hawaii is, oh my God, like
Yeah.
I'm a huge. I've been to both. I love Hawaii. I'd live in Hawaii if I could.
Oh,
So,
cool.
Yeah.
yeah,
Every comic
I
book
don't
writer I
know.
know, every comic book writer I know is trying to say, like, is there we could go to Lake Como Festival. It sounds so good, and I don't think they let us come.
Give them their time to shine.
Yeah.
Like the writer always is getting the props, and the artists don't get enough recognition. So it's nice to see the artists getting their own nod.
I agree.
Thank you.
Hey, it's his fault. He brings you on. I'm going to praise the artist every time. So, well, I know everyone is excited about this book. I wanted to make sure everybody gets their pre-orders in because that's super, super important. Probably not as much about an Absolute book because there's already so much hype about it, but it still matters.
Still matters.
And if I can submit here my own personal idea, I'd love to do this, right? So I do this all the time. Buy an extra one and you give it to a friend, or just leave it in a doctor's office or wherever you happen to be, because you never know who you're going to convert. And if we're talking about bringing new readers into the medium, this is the easiest way to do it. And I know it's going to cost you a couple bucks, but it's totally worth it because it pays it forward to the industry. It puts money in artists, writers, colorists, editors, and letterers' pockets, and helps support all this stuff. It all compounds on each other. So order yourself an extra one anyway and give it to somebody randomly. It'll make them smile, and maybe you'll convert a new comics reader too. So
I love that.
Yeah, that's
Pornsak and
awesome.
Rafael, thanks so much for coming on and hang out with me. I immensely enjoyed this opportunity to return and talk about a really, really cool project with both of you. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, man. It was great.
And Rafa, I don't know if you are a football or soccer fan, but good luck to the Brazilian boys with the World Cup coming up in June. So
Well, yeah, thanks. Let's see how it goes.
you're going to do better than us. I mean, you got a great coach. Our coach is good, right? Like he's a good coach, but not as strong a team that you guys have this year as in years past. But I still think you're going to do just fine. So
I hope so. Yeah.
hey, if Vinny turns it on, he's a beast. Like you'll be fine. You'll be fine. All right.
I hope so.
This is
Ian.
Byron O'Neal. And on behalf of all of us at Comic Book Yeti, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.
See you, man.
Thank you.